Stop looking at the stock market. Stop looking at inflation numbers as if they are temporary anomalies. If you are still analyzing the global economy through the lens of traditional finance, you are living in a mathematical fantasy. What you are witnessing right now is not a recession. It is a managed demolition. In our previous breakdowns, we analyzed operation lock-in and the bail-in mechanisms. We established that the exits out of the traditional banking system are being systematically welded shut. Today, we are applying game theory and predictive history to the final move on the board. We are going to break down the mathematical necessity of the mandatory digital dollar conversion tax. This is global system shift. Let's look at the board. To predict the future actions of a sovereign state, you must remove emotion and look strictly at their incentives and their balance sheet. The United States government is currently managing a $38 trillion debt load. To put that in perspective, the interest payments on that debt alone now exceed the entire national defense budget. We have crossed the event horizon. From a purely mathematical standpoint, a sovereign default is unavoidable. You cannot tax your way out of a $38 trillion hole when the underlying economy is contracting. But global empires do not simply declare bankruptcy and close up shop. They restructure the board, and they always force the citizenry to absorb the cost of that restructuring. The rollout of the central bank digital currency, the CBDC, or the digital dollar, is fundamentally misunderstood by 99% of the public. The media will tell you it is simply an upgrade to digital payments. They will compare it to Apple Pay or Venmo, promising faster transactions and financial inclusion. That is a fatal miscalculation. A CBDC is not a payment system. It is a programmable wealth extraction protocol. Let's apply game theory to this transition. The regime is facing a classic prisoner's dilemma against its own citizens. When a government needs to wipe out massive debt, it must hyperinflate and devalue its currency. But historically, when the public realizes the currency is dying, they execute a capital flight. They panic buy gold, silver, foreign real estate, and Bitcoin. They abandon the fiat system. If the citizens escape, the regime loses its collateral and its power collapses. Therefore, the state must trap the citizens' wealth before the devaluation becomes obvious. So, the strategic question is, how do you wipe out the value of the old paper dollar, force everyone into a new digital control grid, and prevent them from escaping in the process? The answer is a mechanism used repeatedly throughout history. You implement a mandatory conversion tax. Here is exactly how this sequence will play out over the next 24 to 36 months, broken down into 3 distinct phases. Phase 1. The parallel rollout and the trap of convenience. The new CBDC, let's call it the FedCoin, will not be introduced as a mandatory replacement right away. That would cause instant rebellion. Instead, it will be introduced as a parallel alternative. They will incentivize its use through sheer economic pressure. Universal basic income trials, targeted stimulus checks, and federal tax refunds will be distributed exclusively through direct FedCoin digital wallets. Government contractors and federal employees will be paid in this new digital tender. They will offer discounts on federal taxes if paid in CBDC. They will tell you it's safer, immune to bank runs, and mathematically pure. The masses, squeezed by inflation and desperate for liquidity, will gladly download the Fed wallet. They will put on their own handcuffs because the handcuffs come with a signing bonus. Phase 2. The engineered catalyst. Once a critical mass of the population is on board onto the parallel system, the regime needs a trigger to shut down the old system. This requires a systemic shock. It could be a massive cyber attack on the commercial banking grid, a coordinated regional bank collapse contagion, or a sudden liquidity freeze in the repo markets. During this crisis, the traditional paper dollar, your standard debit cards, and your Chase or Bank of America apps will become temporarily useless. ATMs will go offline. Commerce will freeze. But miraculously, the only system functioning perfectly will be the Federal Reserve's direct CBDC ledger. This creates the Hegelian dialectic: problem, reaction, solution. The government creates or allows the problem, the banking freeze. The public reacts with terror and demands access to their money, and the government provides the predetermined solution: the complete migration to the digital dollar. Phase 3. The conversion trap and the haircut. This is the kill shot. This is where the wealth transfer occurs. The Treasury will announce an emergency decree to stabilize the economy and protect citizens. The old paper dollar and traditional bank deposits must be permanently converted into the new CBDC. But here is the mathematical reality they are hiding from you. It will not be a one-to-one conversion. They will introduce a strict deadline. They will say, you have 90 days to log into the federal portal and convert your old bank balances to FedCoin. But to balance the central bank's bloated sheet, they will apply a system stabilization fee, a hidden tax on the conversion. Perhaps you bring $10,000 of old fiat currency. You are credited with 8,000 new digital Fed credits. The missing 20% is instantly erased, wiping trillions in liabilities off the government's books in a matter of seconds. And they will use behavioral economics to force your hand. If you convert in the first 30 days, the tax is 10%. If you wait until day 60, the tax becomes 25%. If you refuse to comply and hold physical paper dollars after the 90-day deadline, those paper dollars will be declared legal tender non grata. They will be demonetized, worthless paper. If you think this is a conspiracy theory, you are ignoring predictive history. Look at India in 2016. The government suddenly demonetized the 500 and 1,000 rupee notes, instantly wiping out 86% of the currency in circulation to force people into the digital banking system. Millions lost their life savings overnight. Look at Germany in 1948. To wipe out wartime debt, the government forced the conversion of the old Reichsmark to the new Deutsche Mark. The conversion rate for average savers was devastating. In many cases, 10-to-1, or even worse. Savers were mathematically wiped out to reset the state's balance sheet. And look at the United States in 1933 under Executive Order 6102. You were forced, under threat of 10 years in federal prison, to surrender your physical gold for $20.67 in paper money. The very next year, the government revalued gold to $35 an ounce, instantly devaluing the paper they just forced you to take by 40%. The tactic never changes. Only the technology upgrades. Once your wealth is converted into the CBDC, the trap is permanently sealed. Because a CBDC is a programmable ledger, the central bank now has absolute, algorithmic control over your purchasing power. They can program the velocity of money. To stimulate the economy, they can program a negative interest rate directly into your wallet. Your money will literally slowly delete itself if you do not spend it by a certain date. Expiration dates on your savings. They can implement geofencing. Your digital dollars might only be valid within a 50-mile radius of your home to enforce 15-minute city compliance. They can enforce carbon footprint limits. Once you buy your monthly quota of gasoline or meat, the algorithm simply blocks the transaction. Transaction denied. Monthly carbon limit exceeded. If you look at the board objectively, as a strategist, there is no way out of the dollar system once this digital net is cast. The exits are closing. The legal framework for confiscation through bail-ins is set, and the technology for the conversion trap is already built and being tested by the Bank of International Settlements. In game theory, when your opponent is preparing an inescapable trap on the board, your only rational, mathematical move is to not be on that board when the trap is sprung. You cannot hold your purchasing power in the exact asset they are mathematically required to devalue and control. You must hold assets that exist completely outside their ledger, assets that cannot be mathematically diluted, digitally erased, or easily confiscated. Physical gold in your own possession. Self-custody Bitcoin where you hold the cryptographic keys. Tangible land. You must position yourself outside the blast radius of the fiat collapse before the final phase begins. What are your thoughts on this systemic breakdown? When the deadline comes, do you believe they will enforce a 1-to-1 conversion, or do you see the haircut coming just like history predicts? Are you preparing to hold hard assets outside the digital grid? Let me know in the comments below. In our next macro analysis, we will zoom out and look at the global geopolitical board. We will break down exactly how the BRICS nations are actively weaponizing this U.S. vulnerability and how they plan to dismantle American financial hegemony by 2027. It is a geopolitical checkmate you need to see to believe. Subscribe to Global System Shift. The math does not lie. Prepare accordingly.